And we're live. Okay. Hello, Serenity Journey. My name is James. If you're new here, and we are here to talk about success and failure and how it impacts your life. Today, so those of y'all that know, I've been following this lead live every day in August challenge. And in that challenge, we were given today to talk about success and failure and what they mean to you. And so thought today I would come in and talk about success and failure. I love this topic. And because I have restrictions, well, not really, it's kind of trying to self-impose restrictions, trying to be respectful of the other people trying to go live. And so because of that, we've been doing a real short job. So I did like a 10-minute live stream, 7 or 8 minutes, something like that. It was really short, talking about success and failure, what it means to me. But it's such a deep topic. It's something I thought I could talk about for a lot deeper than just a few minutes. So what is success and failure? What does it mean to you? How can it help you? How can it hurt you? And what can you do to work on your mindset to change your views of success and failure in your own life? Those are the 3 things that we're going to talk about today on the stream. So what we've been talking about, one of the things that we just did recently is we did our video wrapping up Wayne Dyer's 10 Secrets for Success and Inner Peace. And the other day we did one on treasuring your own divinity. And in that video, I talked about the 6 faces of the ego. And I'm going to go through them a little bit and how they relate to this. But I go into what those 6 faces of the ego are a lot deeper. So check out that video. It's going to be right here in the cards afterwards. It'll also be down in the description below. So you can check out that video and see the full description of the 6 faces of the ego. But as we start understanding the ego, we have to understand that success and failure are illusions created by the ego. They're ideas that we create about what is right and wrong in our lives. And doing this is helping us to understand, as we start understanding that success and failure are just ideas that come from that ego consciousness, then we realize that as we start growing, as we start moving up our own scale of consciousness and we start improving our own lives, then we get to a point where we can transcend the need for success and failure in our lives. We transcend the idea. Think about it. Success and failure comes from judgment. A belief in being successful or being a failure in life comes from judgment of yourself. It comes from judging yourself as being good or bad, as having achieved something or not. And when our achievements, I am what I do, which is one of the faces of the ego, is our achievements. And when our definition of success comes from our achievements, then we judge ourselves based off of how those achievements performed, how we performed in those tasks that we set for ourselves. And 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, in 1994, I went to a conference in Lafayette, Indiana. It was something we did with the Boy Scouts, and we were doing this competition, and it was a team competition, and the team got 3rd place in the nation. My individual, I only got 10th place, but there was over 500 teams that performed in this competition. The problem is, when I came home, I was ridiculed by people because I only got 10th place. And I believed that crap for a long time. So I believed that I went to this competition. We spent 2 years preparing for it. And I felt like I was a failure because I only got 10th place. I didn't achieve the top ratings. I didn't achieve being the best one there at what I did. Now, years later, I've shifted my mindset about it. And I've looked back on it and I said, you know what? There was over 500 teams. And I was in the top 10 in the country at what I did. And I also know, because I know from the judges, I talked to the judges, and I know what I was scored, and I know what I was scored on. 3 words that I even said during the competition, but my voice was real raspy. I was having some troubles talking. I was just getting over strep throat. In fact, I almost didn't even go. If we hadn't spent so much time and effort, I probably wouldn't have gone, but we'd put so much time and effort preparing for it that I couldn't just walk away and leave my team hanging at the last minute. But I was sick the week before. And so my voice was still raspy and recovering. And because of that, those 3 words, the judge that was doing the script didn't hear me say those 3 words. And those 3 words are what put me from being at the top to being at the bottom, to being in the top 10. And that haunted me for a long time. But then I started realizing, you know what? I was sick. I started showing myself some grace. I said I was sick, and I was also doing the absolute best I could do with where I was at the time. And whether that judge heard, it was judge not hearing me say the words, even though I know I said them. So I knew that they were there. I was in the right place. I did the best I could do. And so I don't judge myself anymore by how I did in that competition. I'm also one of the least competitive people you will ever meet in your life. It's like one of the few times I've ever engaged in a competition, and other people actually kind of had to browbeat me into it because I didn't really want to do it. I enjoyed doing what we were doing, but I didn't want to do a competition with it because I've just never been a competitive person. But as I went to that competition, as I look back on it, I realized that, you know what, we were one of the best teams in the nation. And the people that beat me out were really good. And most of them, we were the only team that was even in the top 10, much less the top 3, that had not been to that conference and in that competition before. We were all brand new. Everyone on our team, it was our first time doing it. So that was something that, looking back on it, I was able to realize that my judgment of my performance made me think of it as being a failure when in reality it was pretty successful. And so this is something that I want people to start thinking about, is getting away from that judgment. Stop judging yourself. So much of whether you succeed or fail comes from that judgment based on achievements. The next one is to think about, are you judging yourself based off of what you have? I know a lot of people that judge themselves as being successful or being a failure based on how much money they have, or how much stuff they have, or what type of stuff they have, or do they have a home? People tell you, you have to own a home. You have to be a homeowner. You need to buy a home. If you don't have a home, you don't have the American dream. You're not a successful person because you don't have things that you need to have. Are you judging yourself based off of what you have? Are you making bad financial decisions trying to have stuff that you can't afford? Having done some financial coaching and working with people that were trying to get out of debt, one of the things that we found is 75% of Americans can't even cover a $1,000 emergency because they don't have any money saved, but they have a bunch of stuff that they never use that they don't want just because somebody told them on an advertisement that they needed it. Are you basing your success based off of what you have? Are you basing your belief of who you are, your sense of identity, based off of the stuff you have because somebody else told you to believe in that? That's one of the key things getting out of this ego consciousness. As we start getting out of these faces of the ego, we start realizing that what I have doesn't matter. I see a lot of people that had a lot of stuff and they lose it. We did a lot of these storage units, and most of them are people that just lost their stuff. And it doesn't matter how nice the stuff was. Some of it was good stuff. Some of it was junk. But whether it was good or bad, they lost it because they didn't take care of their business, because they didn't take care of themselves, because they didn't do things the right way. So then the next thing that we want to think about is, are you basing your achievements based on your reputation? And this is one of the worst ones. What other people think about you. This is where people get into people pleasing. They're going around constantly because their reputation, what other people think of them, is way more important than being true to who they are. to being their own truth, being in alignment with their inner being and their inner self. So they spend their entire lives trying to please other people, trying to build a reputation. You see people who do this, whose reputation from 20 years ago, they did this one thing 20 years ago, and that's what their entire reputation is built on. And they really haven't done anything, spectacular since then. But people do that. And people, you look at celebrities, how many people build their reputation and then they lose their reputation because they said or did something. And it destroys the reputation. But when your sense of identity doesn't come from your reputation, then it doesn't matter what other people think of you. Then you're not going to take it personally when other people think of you. You're not going to see yourself as a failure because other people don't think of you the way you want them to think of you. So when you stop judging your success or failure based off of your reputation, you let go of that judgment of yourself, which is something you really can't control anyway. Then you spend a lot less time worrying about building a reputation and start focusing on how may I serve. One of the other things about these things about the ego is they're all focused on yourself. Almost always when you're working out of the ego, you're focused on yourself and serving yourself. When you're working outside of the ego, your focus is on how can I better serve others. It's not about what you get out of it. It's about what you give. When you focus about what you give and what you share with others, what you do for others, and it's nice to receive, and we want to be generous in how we receive, which some people aren't. That's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother video for another day. But one of the things that's key is realizing that the greater energy needs to be serving others. We still focus on ourselves to take care of ourselves. We take care of our own needs. We take care of ourselves in a balanced way. I read a book recently called The Law of One. It's a really hard read because it's a channeled text, and it's a series of questions and answers to this being that they were channeling. But one of the things that they talk about in The Law of One is that you have to have in order to ascend basically into the next level of awareness, you have to be 51% service to others and 49% service to yourself. Whereas to ascend as a negative person, as a negative being, you have to be 95% only self-service. But you don't have to be 95% service to others in order to ascend. Now, why is that? Because Spirit knows that you have to focus some energy on yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, you cannot properly serve other people. But you have to find that balance and be slightly more balanced in service to others while still maintaining your peace, taking care of yourself, finding your boundaries and asserting your boundaries, not allowing people to invade your boundaries while serving other people to the best of your ability. And if you don't really take care of yourself, you're not doing the best you can to serve other people. This is one of those key things. So we find this balance of serving ourselves and serving other people. And this helps us to ascend to higher levels of consciousness. This helps us to move out of ego consciousness and into mastery, into self-awareness, into higher spiritual consciousness, into being able to move into our heart chakra and making decisions out of our heart instead of out of our head. Because a lot of this is the ego is what's going on in your mind, the monkey mind. When you're working out of your mind, you're working out of the ego. When you learn to work out of your heart, what we call a spiritual awakening is literally what they call the awakening of the heart chakra. We go through a lot of awakening experiences. I've been through, probably 20 or 30 that I can think of off the top of my head, maybe more than that, kind of awakening moments where I've kind of opened up more and learned more, and gone through these transformational experiences in my own life. But the one that we call the spiritual awakening is really when the heart chakra opened. And I can tell you when it happened. I can tell you where it happened. I can't tell you the exact date, but I kind of know it was in August. It was in 2006. It was in Daytona Beach, Florida. The one and only time I've ever been to Daytona Beach, Florida, so I know exactly, you know, which trip to the beach it was, because the only one I ever had. That night, I had my heart chakra awakening, and it completely sent me on this roller coaster. That was what started my spiritual awakening, and I went into this really blissed out state for several months afterwards, which is one of those key signs of a spiritual awakening. And whenever I went through that awakening, I started realizing that these ideas of success and failure just come from the mind. And I started realizing, and I started judging myself less. And then I kind of went back into the ego consciousness for a little while, several years. It took me a long time to work out of it. But as I kind of went back into that, we went through what's called the dark night of the soul, which is really where our ego starts transforming and we start learning how to tame the ego. And some people have a dark night of the soul that lasts just a very short amount of time. And some people, like me, are kind of stubborn and go through this really long, drawn out dark night of the soul that takes years and years and years. And that's one of the things that I went through. And it took me a long time to get out of that and to get back into being grounded and being centered and being able to. That's why when I tried to do this kind of content before, even though I had already been through my spiritual awakening, I was in the middle of my spiritual awakening process. I wasn't able to keep that content going because I was still in that dark night of the soul myself. And I hadn't gone through that phase. I hadn't gotten out of that phase of the awakening. And one of the things with the awakening process that a lot of people don't get is it's not a linear process. Sometimes you have multiple things, and sometimes you go into a stage, you come out of it, and then you go back into it. And I did that myself. I went into it, came out of it, went into it, came out of it, went into it, came out of it. I finally kind of got myself to a place where I was grounded and centered and more at peace with myself, which is what this last year has been. It's been like really kind of rounding out my own spiritual awakening and getting myself into that grounded state. And because of that, now I have a greater awareness of these things, and I'm having a deeper intuitive understanding of some of these things. And some of it's hard for me to explain. I'm still learning it and grasping it and understanding it myself. But that's one of the things that's so cool about being able to do this is I don't have to be an expert at this stuff to share what my insights have been. And sometimes I'm just intuitively feeling my way through these things even as I'm talking about it here. So one of the things that I found is when we start looking at the ideas of the ego that are the senses of separation. So when you believe that I'm separate from you, then my definition of success or failure may come from how well am I able to control or manipulate you? How well am I able to get you to do what I want you to do because I'm separate from you? And so since my sense of identity comes from that separation, then that can do that, can lead into how I judge my success or failure. If my sense of success or failure comes from my separation from the things I have, then I will see myself as a failure when I don't have the things that I think I need, the things that I think that I want and that I think I'm separate from. You know, I might feel like a failure a lot if I'm coming from that sense of separation from money because I don't have money and other people have told me I need money. And because I don't have money, then I might feel like a failure because I don't have it. Or maybe I need a job, I need a career, I need this kind of thing. I need to have a sense of fulfillment out of my job. And I've never had a job that I had a sense of fulfillment. The only thing that's ever given me a sense of fulfillment, it's why I keep coming back to content, is creating content, is doing these things right here. This is what gives me a sense of peace and fulfillment in my life. No job I've ever had have given me that sense of fulfillment. And I've never made that much money from doing content. It's not about the money. It's about the peace and the fulfillment that I get from doing it. And it's about being able to share ideas that might help somebody else. The way I look at it, when I publish a video is if one person sees that video and get something that can change their life, then it was well worth the work that I had to put into doing it. And the thing is, they might see it today. They might see it in 5 years. They might see it in 10 years. But when they're ready for it, when the right person is ready to hear this message, they're going to be there and they're going to see it. They're going to hear it. If you do like our content, because we do still have an ego, we still want to grow our community and our channel. You can follow us all the way around the web. Make sure you give us a like and a thumbs up on the video if you like what we are sharing today. Also, if you are watching us on a live stream, I see a couple of people are in the live. Say something in the chat. The reason I'm just rambling on here is because ain't nobody talking to me. So that's one of the things that we like to do, though. We like to interact. That's why I do these live streams, so that we can interact with people. So if you click the little bell and you click all notifications, then you'll get notifications when we go live, and then you can come in and we can actually have conversations about this stuff. It's not just going to be me rambling on for an hour. So that's one of the things. So, give us a like, give us a thumbs up, and join us in the community. We really want to, help more people and talk to more people about these ideas and these concepts. Success and failure comes from self-judgment, period. Whether you believe yourself to be successful or be a failure, it comes from judgment. And if you want to find peace in your life, the mindset shift you need to make is to stop judging yourself as being successful or a failure. Because both of them are coming from the ego. Both of them are coming from judgment. Instead, you need to go into your heart center and feel your way through it and say, does doing this give me a sense of peace? Because your heart center is connected to your higher self. Your heart center is where you're going to start finding your ability to connect with the higher self. And if you've been through a spiritual awakening, you'll be able to sense your heart self, and you'll be able to feel your heart chakra, and you'll be able to feel your way through problems rather than think your way through problems. And when you do this and you start following your feelings and you start following your heart, okay, the heart chakra is right next to the solar plexus chakra. And the solar plexus chakra is where our intuition comes from. But until we've had that heart chakra awakening, our intuition is based on our own personal will and desires versus spirit. Whenever we go through the heart chakra into the solar plexus, this kind of cleanses that energy, and it kind of cleanses that flow so that it comes purely from spirit, and you start connecting with spirit guides. You start connecting with your higher self. And this is what's going to allow you to really feel your way through whether something is right for you or not, whether something was the right thing to do. This is how I create my content. I don't create these videos based on tons of research and what people are searching for and all that kind of stuff that a lot of people tell you to do. I create these videos based on feeling an inspiration through my intuition. Like, I felt inspired when I was given this challenge today in the Lita challenge today by Luria, who's the one that's running the challenge over on Facebook. I knew that that's what not only my live in the group needed to be, but that's also what I was going to talk about on my live stream here. And I spent a lot of time meditating on this today, contemplating what I wanted to say and how I wanted to talk about this. But that's one of the big things is, are you feeling your way through problems, or are you trying to contemplate? Are you trying to use your brain and use the monkey mind to think your way to the solutions? Because the key to every problem you have in your life is in your heart, not in your mind. When you start getting more into your heart and feeling your way through things, you start getting out of the ego. You start getting into being able to flow through things. And then you can start developing your intuition more. This is when you start developing and growing and being able to really trust your intuition, because we all have intuition. I've been intuitive as hell most of my life, but most of that intuition, I couldn't follow it. I couldn't trust it until I had my heart chakra cleansing and opening. And then we start having to do a lot of healing work. This is what the shadow work is. This is what the Dark Night of Soul is about. It's about doing that shadow work. It's about doing that inner healing work. And for most of my spiritual awakening, I didn't know what was going on. I had no freaking clue. It wasn't until I found some videos about it on YouTube that I was like, Hey, that's me. Hey, that's me. Hey, that's me. Hey, that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years. And I started clicking. It started clicking into place, and it started feeling something resonating inside of me. And I started actively and intentionally working on healing my chakras. I started actively and intentionally working on my shadow work. I started actively and intentionally doing the things that I should have been doing all along, but I didn't know I was supposed to be doing because nobody told me. And I didn't have a teacher there to show me the way. Because I spent a lot of that time since my spiritual awakening, I had no teacher. I had no guide. I had nobody that was guiding me through the work that I needed to be doing. I was just floundering for most of that time by myself. Sometimes, even when I'm in a crowd, I'm alone. I've been that way most of my life. I'm okay with it now. I used to be really depressed about that. That used to make me depressed and feel bad about myself. But now I'm okay with it. I'm okay with being a lone wolf, even when I'm in a crowded room. But that's one of the things as we start judging our success and failure based on the mind, and we start letting go of that judgment, and we start saying into the heart and saying, does this give me peace? Does this bring me joy? Does this bring me into love? Does this bring me into unconditional love? Does this bring me into peace? Because peace, if we look at the scale of human consciousness, peace is the gateway to enlightenment. The next level up, once we get fully ingrained in the state of peace, which I'm not at yet myself. I've been there. I know how to get there, but I haven't figured out how to stay there. That's one of the things, because I'm still working on my own shadow self. I'm still working on my own inner demons. I'm still healing my own past wounds. So I haven't been able to stay there, but I know the way there because I've been able to find it a lot. And now I know how to get there really, really quickly because I've been able to do it myself. I do it almost on a daily basis. I spend at least some time every day in that place of peace with myself. And that's when I start listening to my intuition. When I'm at perfect peace and harmony with myself, that's where I start listening to my intuition, because that's what I want to go. See, one of the things with understanding intuition, kind of off topic, but not really, because it's also about judging ourselves, judging our successes and failures based off of how we feel and our judgments. When you're still operating out of the ego and you get an intuition, the intuition is filtered through the ego. And so it will be translated through the ego, and it will often come across as being warped or twisted from what Spirit's really trying to tell you. And this is the problem of the ego, because the ego wants to control. The ego wants to keep you safe, and it wants to keep itself safe. And the best way it can keep itself safe is keep you safe. Number one tool it uses to do that is fear. Fear is an illusion created by the ego to keep you safe. Now, there are healthy fears. If I'm standing in the middle of a jungle and I see a lion right in front of me and I feel that fear, I'm probably going to listen to it because it serves a purpose, because it's a healthy fear. And that's a healthy part of my ego telling me, hey, you got a lion, you better run. Oh, and you see that person over there? You don't have to be the fastest. You just need to be faster than them. That's the key to winning a race with a lion. You don't have to be the fastest person there. You just have to be faster than the slowest person there. If you're the slowest person there, I'm sorry. Your lunch. Little dark humor, but think about it. So that would be a healthy fear. If I'm facing a lion, feeling fear of that lion eating me would be a healthy fear. That would be a healthy message from my ego. But so much of what we fear is unhealthy. And it's a false sense of danger. It's a false sense of, it's worry about something that may or may not happen. And 9 times out of 10, it won't happen unless you focus enough time and attention on it that you manifest it. 9 times out of 10, what you fear will not manifest unless you put a lot of time and attention on it. When you give an idea, a thought, a fear, 61 seconds of your attention, it provides momentum to that for manifestation with the law of attraction. 61 seconds. Now, if you think about it, if you're thinking the same thoughts of fear today and tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow and the day after tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, and you're thinking that same thought of fear, you're giving that more and more momentum to show up in your life. If you stop the momentum, you stop the attraction. So how do we shift it? We shift it out of the ego, out of fear, into a place of love. Love consciousness, joy, happiness, abundance. These are ideas of love. Unconditional love, not conditional love. Conditional love is codependency. Conditional love is ego love. It's not true love. It's actually fear masking as love. But true love is unconditional. And I learned a big lesson in unconditional love from people that I knew several years ago. And I had to come to the realization that even though they were making decisions I didn't agree with, I had to love them unconditionally. And part of that unconditional love meant not having them in my presence, not having them. I didn't have to be in their presence and be in their lives personally in order to love them. I did not have to have the relationship that they wanted with me in order to love them, because that would be conditional love. That would be from the ego. That would be fear-based love, love of lack. That would be codependent love. But having to remove myself from them and still being able to send them loving energy and hoping, wishing them well, never wishing them harm, only wishing them well, wishing them abundance, wishing them joy, wishing them all those things that come from love, wishing them peace in their life. People that were with me when I went through my spiritual awakening, I haven't seen most of those people in over a dozen years. I still send them love. I still think of them regularly, and I send them love. May never see them again, and I'm okay with that, because I don't put the condition of them being in my life to show them love. Sometimes the best way to love some people is to love them from the distance. You can love them more from a distance than you can in person, and that's okay. I can get out of the conditions of love with my ex-wife. I love her unconditionally. I don't agree with the lifestyle she chooses. I don't agree with a lot of the things that she does in her life, but I send her love. I wish her well. I wish her peace. I hope that she finds the peace that she so much was searching for. But she's one of those people that's easier to love from a distance than in person. And I know that. So I don't have contact with her. And she's not in my life. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. We have to be okay with where we're at in our own journey and our own growth. So that's one of the things that we have to come to realize, is sometimes we can love people from a distance without the condition of them being present in our lives for us to love them. We have to let go of the conditions we put on our love. As parents, we have to let go of the conditions we put on our love for our children, including them behaving the way we want them to behave, including them doing the things that we want them to do, including them being present in our lives. As our children grow up and they grow older, they may leave, and they may or may not ever come back to see us again. We have to love them either way, because now you're loving them unconditionally. If your love is dependent on them coming to see you or coming to take care of you or coming to do things for you, that's not love. That's fear. Masking is love. That's codependency, which is purely fear. And we have to break free of that codependency. If we want to really find compassion, if we want to break free of judgment, if we want to really be the best that we can be, we have to break free of these ideas of success and failure that come from judgment, that come from the ego. Get into love, joy, peace. Love, joy, and peace are at the top of the emotional scale. Those are the highest emotional set points that we can get to. And when we can learn, I haven't gotten there totally myself. I'm better now than I used to be, but I'm not where I want to be at that yet. But whenever I can get to the place of unconditional love and just live from that place, when I can get to that place of peace, which is even higher than unconditional love on the map of consciousness, when I can get to that place of peace and serenity with myself and with others and live from that place, that's the gateway to enlightenment, to true enlightenment and true oneness consciousness. Enlightenment is where we get into consciousness in which we are at one with Creator. And when you can get to that highest level of awareness, that's where all the great spiritual teachers were at. That's where Jesus taught from. That's where Buddha taught from. That's where Lao Tzu taught from. That's where the Dalai Lama teaches from. Those highest levels of consciousness, at unconditional love, at perfect peace, at enlightened being. These ascended masters. That's the true ascension, is getting into that stage of enlightenment, which comes from being it. You have to get to unconditional love first. You have to get to unconditional peace first. And you have to be able to stay there. You can't just get there, be there for a little while, and then drop out of it. You have to get there and stay there. And then you can ascend up into enlightenment. I'm not there yet. I've met a couple of people that were really close, but I've never met anybody that was truly there. I've met a lot of people that have claimed to be there, but then as you listen to them talk, because I'm a Scorpio and I dig into things and I tear people apart, and I'm a disruptive influence in people's lives because that's part of my energy. My fire and water energy, Aries and Scorpio, rules my chart. And when I disrupt people's ego when they're claiming not to have one, they don't like it. Sometimes people are claiming to be ascended masters that aren't. There's a lot of them on Clubhouse. There's a lot of them here on YouTube. There's a lot of them in social media that are claiming to be ascended masters that aren't. One of the biggest ways to tell if they're really not an ascended master, if you look at all the teachings of all the ascended masters, none of them ever claimed to be an ascended master. It was their followers that claimed that they were ascended masters. It was retrospectively looking at their lives that we discovered that they were ascended masters. None of them claimed to be free of the ego. None of them claimed to be at that high level of consciousness. They just taught from where they were at. They just taught from love. They just taught from their perfect love and perfect peace. And when you're at a low level of consciousness and you're in pure consciousness, which is the low levels of the scale of consciousness, and you translate the teachings of these high level masters, the ego always influences the translation and they always get distorted. This is the problem with studying spiritual texts from the point of people that are at low level of consciousness. Because when people that are at low levels of consciousness are translating the teachings of a highly ascended master, they always get distorted by the ego. Always. And this isn't to blame anybody. This isn't to downgrade anybody. It's just, it is what it is. And we have to accept that and realize that this is a distortion of the truth. This is not the truth as it was taught. And so there's not a single written text from any ascended master that is perfect, because they were all written and translated by people that were at lower levels of consciousness than the people that actually did the teaching. If you notice in the Bible, there's not a book of Jesus, because Jesus didn't write his teachings down. They were written down by other people who were at lower levels of consciousness than he was. Every one of them. It's not to say that the Bible is a bad book. I think it's one of the greatest books ever written, but it's only one of. It's not inerrant. It's been proven not to be inerrant. It was never meant to be taught as. In fact, it wasn't until 150 or so years ago that the idea of the Bible being inerrant became popular in the Christian religion. It's actually only here in the U.S. that it's that popular. If you talk to people from other countries in Christianity, they know that the Bible is not perfect. They know that the Bible is not inerrant. They don't teach the Bible the same way that it's taught here in the U.S. Evangelical Christianity is a very U.S.-based thing, and it's a huge distortion of biblical teachings. And I'm not trashing biblical scholars. I'm not trashing Christianity, although sometimes I come across that way. But I am going to disrupt people's worldview about a philosophy that they claim to be perfect that's not, because it's distorted by the egos of the people who are translating it. And I'm not even out ruling myself. I have my own translations of the Bible that I believe in, but I'm not going to say that they're perfect. Because my ideas, my philosophies, guess what, are coming from my level of consciousness. And I haven't ascended. I'm not an ascended master. I'm nowhere near it. I got a long way to go. But I'm better at it now than I used to be. I'm a lot further along in the process because I've made it an intentional practice in my life to be better, to continue my growth, to continue my own alignment with my own spiritual being, to listen to spiritual guides, and to listen what they say about those ascended masters and their teachings. You want to know what the ascended masters taught? Ask your spirit guides. Get in touch with your spirit guides and start talking to them about the task and start debating with them the philosophies taught by different ascended masters. You're getting some great. It's great to have an argument with your spirit guides, and it's okay. They're okay with it because they know where you're at, and they're willing to debate with you. At least mine are. As long as it helps us continue to grow. But one of the biggest lessons I learned in the last year was letting go of judgment. And it's one I'm still working on. I'm better at it now than I used to be. If you don't know what I'm talking about when I say that, watch yesterday's live stream. We'll link to it right here in the cards on the replay. But you watch yesterday's live stream, because yesterday's live stream was all about that mantra. I'm better now than I used to be. That's what the entire live stream I did yesterday was about. It's one of the most important things you can learn in your life. It's about constant daily improvement. It's not about being perfect. It's not about reaching some lofty goal. It's about being better today than you were yesterday. It's about moving forward day by day. Continue growing, continue learning, continue being better than you were before. And when you can do that, you can eventually reach those ascended masters. Will I live long enough to reach that ascension? I don't know. I may do it within this lifetime. I may have to come back 10 more lifetimes to get there. I think that's the eventual goal of every person on this planet. I think that that's part of our journey. That's part of our growth that we're coming back here for over and over again until we get to that level. Only a handful of people have reached it so far. But my point is, my goal is not to help people ascend. My goal is to help people get higher up the scale so that they can be in a better position the next lifetime. If I can get you higher up the levels of awareness now, then when you come back next time, you'll be ready to go even further. I've been higher up the scale than I'm even at right now. And I know that because I know about some of my past lives. I know where I've been. I also know what kind of things I've done in the name of good that were not so good. And I've had to atone for some of that. I've had to make peace with some of that. I've had to live out the karma for some of that. And I've had to be okay with living out that karma. But don't judge ourselves. This is one of the reasons why I don't want us to judge ourselves on success and failure. And because what you consider to be a failure, one might be a success based on a different perspective. But it's also, you could be struggling with something in your life because you're paying a karmic debt from a previous lifetime. I've had so many of those as I come into my own awareness, as I start realizing my own past life experiences. I realize where some of the things I've been through in this lifetime were paying my karmic debt for mistakes I've made in previous lives. And I have to clear those debts. I have to pay that price before I can clear it so I can move on. So I can continue my own ascension. I continue my own journey. I have to pay that karmic debt. And I've been doing that a lot this lifetime, a lot of my lifetime this lifetime. That's why I've been through so much pain and struggle and conflict. A lot of this lifetime was me paying karma from previous lifetimes because I haven't always been a nice person. I haven't come into every lifetime being a good person, although I always thought I was. I've done things that were atrocious. I've done things that were not nice. I've done things that were out of alignment with spirit. I've done things in the name of spirit that were out of alignment with spirit. in previous lives. And I've had to pay the price for that in this one. And I'm at peace with that. I'm okay with that. Since I started recognizing some of these things, I started recognizing some of these patterns that I've been living out my entire life. I now recognize so much of, and I'm at so much more peace with my own past because I have such a deeper understanding of why it was there. But you can't do that until you start finding peace with yourself. You start finding your own unconditional love, and still you start communicating with your spirit guides and start moving up your own consciousness. You're not going to understand some of that. If you haven't been through a spiritual awakening, you're probably not going to understand 90% of what I'm talking about. It's probably not going to resonate with you. You're probably going to think I'm being an ass. You might even think I'm being, something that I'm not. Because I'm going to be disruptive to worldviews. That's part of my journey. That's part of my medicine. That's part of my healing work that I do. I disrupt worldviews to help people get out of the ego. One of the big core concepts in my channel. And it's actually funny because I've been working on things for my channel and trying to figure out kind of what I'm talking about. And one of the things that I had in my original plan for the channel, and I was like, kind of, holding back on it myself because, I'm still not perfect. I'm still working on it. But one of the first things that came to my mind was I need to work on helping people get out of the ego as well. The first things I wrote down whenever I put down what I was going to do with this channel. And then I said, well, that's my own ego telling me that. I can't help people get out of their ego. And then it's funny because I'm doing all this stuff and that one keeps coming up is I need to do more work on the ego. I need to work on my own ego, but I also have to work on helping other people get out of their ego. I was talking to somebody in Clubhouse just yesterday, and they're sitting there looking at my astrology chart, and they're kind of helping me to understand some of the things in there and helping me to define what some of the things mean. And she said, "You're psychic as hell." One, first thing out of her mouth was, "You're psychic as hell," and I laughed. I was like, "I've been told that my whole life, but I really don't know how to use it." I mean, I know I'm empathic. I know I can feel people's emotions. And yes, I was an empath before being an empath was cool. I've known I was an empath since the mid 90s. Before being empathic was cool, before even being spiritual and doing all this hokey stuff was cool. Back then, we were ridiculed for doing this kind of stuff. But I didn't really know what that was meant, and I never had anybody teach me how to control it. I've only been learning how to control that particular part of my psychic ability in the last year. And I'm still not good at it. I'm better at it now than I used to be, but I'm still not great at it. But then she also said that I'm more than just an empath. But then also we looked at a few other things, and she said, "You're disruptive." She says, "You don't like conflict, but you're really good at it." I was like, well, yeah. I said, "I hate conflict, but it seems to just follow me everywhere I go." She said, "You disrupt people to help them awaken to where their ego's in the way." And I said, "What?" She said, "Yeah, that's part of your healing work." She said, "You're a disruptive healer. You disrupt people to help them heal." Well, I never thought of it that way. But then as I started looking at it, I started contemplating and meditating on it last night, and I was like, one of my spirit guys kind of said, "Well, we've been telling you that for months and you ain't been listening." And I'm just like, okay. I said, "How do I do this?" Because I don't like to piss people off, but whenever I disrupt people, I piss them off, and then they don't want nothing to do with me, and then they don't follow me on social media. So how do I disrupt people and get them to like me and follow me? I'm trying to figure that out. It'll all work out. It'll be okay. We're working it out. We're figuring out how to do it. We'll make a way through it. But I disrupt people. I disrupt people to help them heal. I never looked at it that way, but that's what I've been told. And I've been told this now from multiple sources in just the last 24 hours. That was just one conversation that it came up. It's been told that same thing from multiple sources, including my own spirit guides, in just the last 24 hours, that's part of my healing work is to disrupt people to help them heal their own ego, to help them raise their consciousness out of their ego and do their healing work. I was like, well, that's a big order for me to teach people how to do something I ain't never done myself. And then I get, oh, you're better at it than you think you are. You've been doing better at it than you think you have. I'm like, I don't know. But I'm a little weird. That's what I think. And I'm way off topic again. I'm just kind of rambling here now. But this comes back to our judgments. This is where I was going with that whole long off topic ramble. I've been judging myself harshly. I've been judging myself by these standards, by these expectations, by these ideas that didn't resonate with me, didn't work for me. And over the last year, I've figured out that I've got to let go of those judgments. I've got to let go of those expectations of myself and stop judging myself, which means stop seeing myself as a success or a failure based off standards that other people gave me. How much money am I making from doing this? How many followers do I have? How many people are reading my videos or reading my blogs or doing the things that we're doing? How much money are you making from your job? These are the standards that people tell us we have to measure our success and failure from. And they're all things that are outside of your immediate control. They're things you can learn to influence, but you can't control them. We go right back to where we started this channel, the serenity prayer. Accept the things you cannot change, which is what everybody else does with what you do. Change the things you can change, which is what's going on inside of you. Is what you're doing bringing you to peace with yourself? Is what you're doing giving you peace with yourself? If so, then that's what you need to be doing. Don't judge yourself by an ego-based standard of success and failure. Learn to get into your own heart. Learn to connect with your own heart. Why do I promote meditation so much? Almost every video it comes up, meditate, 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 because meditation gets you into your heart. It gets you out of your head and into your heart. It takes a while because the ego says, no, you have to pay attention to me. No, you have to pay attention to me. That's why it takes so long to learn how to get into silence and get out of your own head. It takes some people a few days, sometimes a few weeks, a few months. Some people it takes years. It took me about 3 years to really get into it. Because my head wants to go 900 miles an hour. Every time I try to get out of it, it wants to say, no, pay attention to me. But we let go. We get into peace. We find our harmony. And we let our heart take over. We get into that heart consciousness. We meditate. We find our peace. And then we make our choices from there. We live our life from that place of peace. The more you do that, the more frequently you do that, the more you're going to experience that in your life. The more you get into that place of peace when you're making decisions, when you're doing manifestation work, when you're doing the things that you want to do, the more you're going to actualize into your life. Thomas Maslow, one of the great teachers of human psychology, taught that self-actualizing people must be what they can be. They must be what they can be. So if you want to become a self-actualized person living at the highest levels of consciousness, then you have to get out of self-judgment and start living from heart-centered energy where you really get in touch with what you can be. You'll never experience your potential until you get out of self-judgment. So I hope that this helps. We will go into this deeper. If you have any questions, leave me a comment below. If you think that this might help somebody else, share it out with a friend. I know it's a long ramble, but if you want to help somebody else, help us out, help us share the content. So I hope that this has been fascinating. I enjoy talking about this stuff, and I can ramble on all night, but I got kids that I got to get to bed, and I got other things I got to do. So we love you. We will see you tomorrow. Haven't figured out what tomorrow's topic will be. I'll be meditating on that here in about an hour or so. And we will see y'all next time. Y'all have a fantastic day. Love you.